Boy, hasn't this conference been a blessing? And if you haven't laughed like you've never laughed and cried like you've never cried, I'm not sure you're a real person. I don't know. But what a great time we've had, and brother David, you did a great job. Amen. Great job. And let's give him a big hand. And everything about the conference has just been first class. And I've been part of First Baptist Church, Hammond, Indiana, since 1983, and went there as a student. Been on staff for 34 years, and I've been a part of all that that's gone on there. With the pastor schools and all the conferences and the big days and all that, but. And I know some people might, you look at Hammond and think, well, that's the big league. But the truth is, this has been big league. What goes on here is big league. What you do in your church is big league. And sometimes we confuse, what's really important and who's really important. And we kind of evaluate everything by size, and it's not always about the size. It's about the sort. And, I think about some of you who, you don't have a bus ministry, you don't have a bus. And I would just say, go take your car and go pick up some people. And fill that car up, and then find somebody in your church and say, hey, can I fill up your car? And you got a minivan, let's go fill up your minivan, and just do what you can. Just do what you can. And I believe God, the bus ministry, this bus is just it's a vehicle. It's just a tool. That's all it is. It's a tool. And the main thing, it really boils down to soul winning. Amen. The main thing really boils down to winning people to Christ, discipling converts, seeing them grow in the Lord. Amen. And we can do that. You can do it in a car. You can do it in a van. You can do it in a bus. Just figure out a way. But, I think about, Proverbs 11:30 says, the fruit of the righteous is a tree of life, and he that winneth souls is wise. And I hope you're challenged this week, not just in the bus ministry, though this is a bus conference, obviously, and I've heard it said, we want you to be inspired to go buy a bus and fill up a bus, or keep going with your bus ministry, but don't miss the most important thing about serving God, and that's winning people to Jesus Christ. Amen. And we ought to be consistent in our soul winning. It's so easy to relish in the stories of the past. Let me tell you about this person I won to Christ 5 years ago or 10 years ago. What about last week? What about last month? But we need to be consistent in our soul winning. And I tell you what, we're all guilty of it. It's hard sometimes. It's hard to be consistent, but we need to be consistent in our soul winning. We need to be conscious about it. We need to be soul conscious. Think about people that we come across who are without Christ and don't know the Lord. And then we need to be convicted soul winners. Every time soul winning is talked about, I'm convicted. And we ought to be convicted, because it's something that if we're not careful, it'll get away from us. And we'll go weeks and months, and some will go even years without sharing the gospel and without ever trying to win somebody to Christ. And, I was thinking, years ago I won a contest, and they called it the trip of a lifetime. And the contest was, if you won, you go on a trip with Brother Hiles, and he took us to his roots. And I'll never forget, we were on a coach bus, and he was standing at the front of the bus, and we had just went to his birthplace, Italy, Texas. And there's a monument there, and as a memento of the birthplace of Brother Hiles. And I remember I was sitting on the second or third row, and Brother Hiles was talking about Italy, Texas, the place where he was born. And I'll never forget what he said. He said, and a tear came to his eye. And he said, you know, Italy, Texas is a small place. And he said, what I'm afraid of, he said, a lot of our graduates don't want to go to places like Italy, Texas. They want to go to New York City and Miami, Florida, and Detroit, Michigan, and LA. And of course, all those places need the gospel as much as anywhere. But he was campaigning for the little places. And I'll never forget that. And I think about you men that are here, and a lot of you are in little places. But it's where God has called you. And that little place where you are needs the Lord. Those people need Christ. And boy, I hope you're motivated and challenged by that. Tonight, I want to talk to you about the importance of the bus ministry. As we end this conference, I want to just kind of reset the mindset of everyone in this room that the bus ministry is important. If you would, take your Bibles and turn to Matthew chapter 19. And for sake of time, I won't read all the verses that I want to read tonight. But I think the point that I want to get across is here, Matthew chapter 19 and verse 13. Matthew chapter 19, verse 13. The Bible says, then were there brought unto him little children, that he should put his hands on them and pray. And the disciples rebuked them. But Jesus said, suffer little children and forbid them not to come unto me, for of such is the kingdom of heaven. And he laid his hands on them and departed thence. You'll find those same verses in Mark and again in Luke. And the word suffer means to allow. And Jesus was saying, let the kids come to me. I want the kids to come to me. And of course, and Brother Josh mentioned this morning, the disciples were trying to protect the Lord and was thinking that, we don't want the little kids near Jesus. And Jesus was just the opposite. He was saying, no, let the little kids come. I want to touch the little kids. The word forbid means not to hinder. God forbid we would ever hinder someone from coming to Jesus. We may not buy into everything that's done 100%, but boy, never be a hindrance. Amen. Never be a hindrance. Never hinder a little child from coming to the Lord. And I never want to be part of I want to be part of a church that is allowing children to come to the Lord and is not keeping them from the Lord. I looked up I was searching a little, researching some statistics and found out here that 64% of adult Christians were saved before the age of 18. How many of you were saved before you were 18 years old? Would you raise your hand? Look around the room. I mean, that's quite a sight. 13% were saved between 18 and 21. 23% were saved after 21 years of age. A high percentage of those that were saved before the age of 18 was a result of a family member or a family friend. Now listen to this. The chances are very slim for children to be saved if they live in a home where there are no Christians, unless they live in a town or a city that has a church bus ministry. Thank God for the bus ministry. Thank God for the bus ministry. I know some might say, you've had, and I would imagine, Brother Bill, even in your small town, the last 18 years, you've had thousands of people that have been saved. Some might say, where are they? Where are they? How come not here tonight? I don't know where they are, but I know where their name is written. And I know where they're going to go when they die. They're going to spend eternity in heaven. And the critics can say what they want, but the truth is the bus ministry works. Thank God for the bus ministry. I want to show you just this kind of a cute, funny video that I want you to show. This was done for us a few years ago, and then I want to share some other thoughts with you tonight.
Enzo, Ruben, Peñalosa, Sanchez. That people say funny jokes. The Brown Sox one. They say, Enzo, I saw when you took off your socks. I saw you put them off. You threw them at a tree. That's why you don't know how to read. That he owns City Baptist. But he has a nice place. Kind of like mine. The one when all these brothers push Joseph or someone into this big deep hole. They buried him up and then they digged him up out. And then one of the guys named Ruben said, we should sell him as a slave. So he was a slave. And one day the king left, and then the wife, she was running after him, and she ripped off a part of his shirt. I mean, he went to jail, and then he had this dream when there was these big fat cows and some other skinny cows. And then the other cows just ate the cows. But then when they got out of jail, and then he was a king. The end. I'm glad to ride the bus every Sunday.
Is a missionary in Nigeria, Africa. When he was in Bible college, he brought his mom to church and won her to Christ, and she began to grow in the Lord and put her in City Baptist School. And her senior year, she got expelled and got away from the Lord and just kind of went out into the world, had some children, and she showed up at my office one day, and she had two of her teenage kids with her, not Enzo, but his older brother and sister. And he said, she said, Brother John, I've made a lot of mistakes through my life, and she said, I don't want my kids to make those same mistakes. And I never forget, I said, her name is Marina. I said, Marina, you've not been in church. Your kids have not been in church. And I didn't even know if her kids were saved. And it'd been so long since she had been in church. And I said, the first thing I need to do is I need to find out what bus route you live on and send a bus captain over there. And so she gave me the address, and it happened to be my bus route. And, of course, it was in Chicago, so anywhere in Chicago would have been my bus route. But I went by there on that Saturday, and I led Christine and George to the Lord. They got saved, and they enrolled in our school, City Baptist, that semester. And George is a senior. He'll graduate from City Baptist this year. Christina is a junior. She surrendered to be a missionary last year. And Enzo's their little brother, who also attends City Baptist School. And, the bus ministry works. The bus ministry works. But you know what? It takes a lot of work to work the bus ministry. And I want to share with you, I shared a little bit of my testimony already. I didn't come from a church that had a bus ministry. It wasn't even a soul-winning church. My parents were saved, but they weren't what we would consider independent, fundamental Baptist, and wasn't familiar with Brother Hiles or even Hiles Anderson all through my years of growing up in church until my senior year. My senior year, I was introduced to youth conference, and I actually went to public school all my years except for my senior year. I went to Christian school for 1 year, and it was through that church. It wasn't even, our church didn't have a Christian school. We traveled 20 miles into Plymouth, Massachusetts, went to a small Christian school called Plymouth Rock Christian School. And it was through that church I was introduced to a youth conference, and went to youth conference, and God called me to preach. And I knew that God wanted me to go to Hiles Anderson. I had already visited Bob Jones University and Liberty, and those were the schools that were mostly promoted by our church. But I knew in my heart that God wanted me to go to Hiles Anderson. And in that first weekend, I got on a bus route. Had no idea what I was getting into. but God really worked in my heart and spoke to me. And after graduation, Brother Ray Young, who has spoke here, called me in and asked me if I would be his assistant, and I served with him for about 12 years. And then when Brother Hiles passed away, I was asked to be the bus director and took Brother Young's place, and have been doing that now for 20 years. Next year will mark 40 years that I've been in the bus ministry, and I want to share with you just some observations about the bus ministry and about bus kids that I have made. I've never been a bus kid, and I truthfully cannot relate like some can. But I do have a heart. I do love bus kids. I love bus ministry. But just several things that come to my mind as I was jotting these notes down. Number one, most bus kids would not choose their circumstance. Most kids would not choose their circumstance. A lot of our bus kids that come to church, when they see other kids and other families who come to church with their parents, wish they had what they had. And I think if you were to interview most bus kids and ask them, would you have chosen the family that you live and the situation you live in, most of them would not. They would not choose it. It's just it's where they are. It's not true for everyone. Some have good families, some have good parents, but it's because their parents have been saved. Most, if they had a choice, would choose something much different. Most of them would not choose to live in a home where it's just mom taking care of the kids and dad is nowhere to be found. Most would not live in a home where there's gang activity and where there's drugs and there's just a lot of sin, a lot of evil that goes on. Most of our bus kids would not choose that. The second thing I would say about bus kids is that bus kids want a chance. They really do. They want a chance. I remember I was a college student. I was sitting in church one Sunday night and had a boy sitting by me. He was about 12 years old, and his name was Carlos. And during the invitation, after Brother Hiles had preached, he tapped me on the shoulder and he said, "Brother John, what are the chances? What are the chances?" And I don't know if I understood completely at that moment what he meant, but later on I kind of figured out what he was saying is, what are the chances that I could make it? What are the chances that I could live for God, that I could be faithful to the Lord? And I realized that his chances were that somebody would invest in his life and somebody would care about him. And thank God for the bus workers and the Sunday school teachers who did invest in him. Today, Carlos is a deacon at First Baptist Church. The next thing I would say is this: bus kids that are saved want to do right. They want to do right. I know bus kids get a bad rap sometimes. I get it. We've got our kids that are handfuls, like every church does. But you know what? If they're saved, there's a desire inside them because of the Holy Spirit of God that says, I want to do the right thing. Now, I've often thought about my own life. You know, we never had liquor in our home. My parents, we never had drugs in our house. My siblings weren't in the gangs. We didn't have the same temptations and the same struggle that a lot of our bus kids have. But those kids, many of them want to do what's right, but it's hard. It's hard. Because we get them for a little bit on Sunday, and then we have to take them back to their worldliness and to the evil and the sin that they are surrounded with. And it is hard. It is hard. I've often thought that some of the best Christians that go to our churches are the bus kids. Because let's face it, for most of us that grew up in a Christian home, we've had to say no to very little. We've had to say no to very, very few temptations. But some of these bus kids, it's no every day. It's like no every moment. No, 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 no. And then they come to church. And they just want a chance to make it. Some of those bus kids are great Christians. The other thing I would say is this, is bus kids can be high maintenance and need a lot of patience. Need a lot of patience. It takes a lot of patience to work with bus kids because some of them are high maintenance. Some of them are they're crying for attention because they don't get it at home. Next thing I would say is this: bus kids need to be saved. Bus kids need to be saved. Boy, never stop preaching the gospel to the kids. Never stop preaching the gospel to the kids. When you have an opportunity to lead a child to the Lord, it's not 1, 2, 3, repeat after me. Make sure that child understands. You treat that child like you'd want the soul winner that's going to win your child to Christ would do it. You know, we've got a lot of college kids getting their assurance of their salvation because a soul winner didn't explain salvation to them properly when they were children. And I understand there may be more to that and just a lack of understanding with kids, but we need to make sure that children understand salvation. Make sure there's an understanding there. And I've told kids, you know, maybe let's talk about this next week because there's a little disconnect. There's some misunderstanding there. And I'm not trying to just add a chalk mark to the number of people that I've won to Christ that week by winning a child to Christ. We're very careful. But bus kids need to be saved. It's very sad the number of young people that have been killed on the streets of Chicago. I've been to too many funerals. I've preached too many funerals for bus kids. It's tough. It's tough. Osmond Gutierrez's brother, his younger brother named Salvador. I have a picture of holding Salvador when he was just a toddler, 2 or 3 years old, carrying him on the bus. When Salvador got a little bit older, he went to City Baptist for a year or two, but he just didn't work out for him, and he was already meddling with the gangs and getting in trouble. I told him, I said, Salvador, I said, if you don't straighten up, I said, I can't let you stay in our school. And he made his decision. He made his choice. He got involved in the gangs. And I'll never forget, it was a Sunday afternoon. We had just finished dropping off the riders from taking the kids home. I was driving back to the church, and I got a call from Osmond's sister. And she said, Brother John, she said, Salvador's been shot and killed. And I turned around. I went back up to the city and got there, and they had it coned off, and they would put a little marker, the police put a little small little cone at every shell casing that they found on the street. And I'm not kidding, there were 100 of them. And at 1:30 in the afternoon, shot and killed him as he was walking down the street. He was 21 years old. When I finished with the family, I got in my car and I drove back, started driving back to the church, and I called the office and I said, do me a favor. I said, please look in our records and see if there's a decision slip for Salvador. And I'll never forget getting a message back and said Salvador has a decision slip. When he was 12 years old, he got saved. Amen. I know he made some bad choices. But I'm going to tell you something. There's not a bad choice that's worth going to hell when you die. Right. And I know Salvador's in heaven because he trusted Christ as a Savior. Bus kids need to be saved. They need to be saved. Amen. And boy, I could tell that story over and over and over again so many times. And I know this happens all over our country, but bus kids need to be saved. Amen. You may never fill your bus, but let's make sure we're getting kids saved. Amen. And that's the most important thing, that we're winning people to Christ. Bus kids want to be loved. Bus kids need someone to believe in them. Someone to just say, I believe in you. I believe you can make it. I believe you can live for God. I believe you've got hope. I believe in you. Bus kids can do right in spite of their circumstances. By the way, we don't give our kids an out because of their circumstance. We don't make excuses for our bus kids. We tell them, you can live right. You can do right. In spite of your family life, in spite of the challenges, you can do right. Bus kids can make it, and they can serve God with their lives. Yes, they can. Yes, they can. And I don't know how many times on a Sunday afternoon after running our buses, I wonder sometimes, are we wasting our time? Is this for naught? But then my mind always goes to some bus kid that is living for the Lord, and they're living for God, and the reason they are is because somebody stepped in and helped them along the way. I want to read for you a testimony that I received from a former bus rider. This was not from our church. It's actually a church in Michigan. But she wrote this. She wrote, I rode the bus to church for the first time when I was 4 years old. And that started my years as a bus kid. And for the next 12 years, off and on, I would ride the bus to church. I grew up in a home where Christ was never mentioned except as a curse word. My single mom did all she could to provide for her 2 boys and 2 girls after my father left when I was around 2. She worked a lot. My grandmother, who also had been a single mom, tried to pick up the slack however she could. If it were not for dedicated and diligent bus workers, I'm not really sure if I would ever have known salvation. Thousands of young kids with stories very similar to mine are picked up on a church bus every year. The bus ministry is a wonderful outreach through which many are saved and baptized. I was led to Christ by a conscientious worker when I was 7 years old. Many young people start riding buses and eagerly trust Christ, but unfortunately many of them ride for a short time and then fall away or seemingly lose interest. Thank God that my life was salvaged through the bus ministry, and I'm serving God today. Because of my experience growing up on a bus, there's some things that my bus workers did well that made a difference, and your bus kids wish for you to know too. These are written from a bus kid's perspective. She says, number 1, be patient with me. I'm doing things my way, what I want, how I want, when I want. Structure is new to me. I don't know what is good for me. I may be resistant, but that doesn't mean that I don't want structure or need it in my life. She said, give me your undivided attention. She said, I already fight for attention against the TV, the phone, the internet, other vices, and other people who seem to matter more while I'm at home. I don't want to have to fight for your attention at church as well. When I'm on the bus, talk to me, not the other workers. She said, I'm not a number. I'm not a kid to fill an empty seat or to help you win an attendance race. I really do have feelings, even if I don't show it. I want to be valued. I need someone to notice me, to care for me, to see me for who I am. I am an investment. I want to be encouraged, not just corrected. She said, don't allow my family to intimidate you. My family's rough and not always polite, but they need Jesus. Don't avoid contact with them. If my parents get saved and become dedicated to Christ, my life will dramatically be changed for the better. Don't forget about those whom I love. Never stop asking them to come to church or sharing God's salvation and God's word with them. I thought about Jim Portakalian. Remember him in college and how he didn't let your dad intimidate him. Don't assume that I'm saved. This Sunday may be the last time at church. I may not hear the gospel again. Make sure that you ask me often and keep the gospel the focal point. Make sure I understand eternity is at stake. I want to be hugged. I know there are rules against physical contact, and they are for safety and propriety, but I want to know that I'm loved. Show it. I need you to be my greatest influence. You need to be more of an influence on my life than my friends who are involved in sin. You need to be more invested in me than a teacher at school or the coach of my team. You need to be the most significant voice I hear, because I'm going to be who or what my greatest influence is. So if I'm going to be a dedicated, growing Christian, I need you to be dedicated to me. You need to have more influence in my life than just checking up on me on Saturday and taking me to church on Sunday. Come to my games. Take me to the park. Send me a birthday card. I will follow someone, and it will be the one who takes the most interest in me. Remember, I'm in a pit. Even if it's not my own pit, I'm stuck in the mire. I live in a non-Christian home in an unchristian world. My parents have not set me up for spiritual success. I need direction. I need someone to point me to the Lord so that he can establish my goings and put a new song in my mouth. That was written by a bus kid. Bus ministry is a ministry of compassion. And I mentioned this last night, but there is a difference between pity and compassion. There's a reason why we're not all making a difference. It's because the Bible is very clear. It says only some make a difference because only some have compassion. Only some are willing to go. And boy, I tell you, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work every week getting up, every week going to a bus meeting, every week going to your bus route, every week getting up early to check out that bus and go pick up those riders. And some days the bus is full and it's exciting, and some days it's not as full, but just doing it week after week after week after week after week. The bus ministry requires a lot of work and sacrifice. It's not easy. It requires diligence and commitment and hard work. But the bus ministry has great rewards. Great rewards. Brother Bill has talked a little bit about our time together in Bible college, and you came in what year? In 1990, yeah. 1990 was the year I was hired to work at First Baptist Church. I had been a bus captain in the Humboldt Park area of our city for about 5 years, and Brother Young had asked me if I would go to Division I. And you remember this, Division V was a big division, and they had a lot of workers, and Division I had hardly any workers. There was 10 bus routes in Division I at the time, only 2 bus captains. Matter of fact, there was 3 bus captains, and one quit that weekend. My first weekend in the division, that he quit. So I was down to 2 bus captains. I had 8 bus routes without a bus captain. And so I didn't know exactly what to do. I knew I needed to be a bus captain, and so I would visit with different bus captain or different workers in the division, and every week I just kind of asked the Lord, is this the route that you would have me to take? And I went with Albert Lopez one week, and I forget who all the other guys were, but third week in the division, I went with a guy named Chris Fittikanen. You remember Chris? And I said, Chris, I'm gonna go on your bus route today. Why don't you show me some of the kids that ride your bus? And as we were driving to the bus route, I said, Chris, how many did you guys have last week? And he said they had like 10 riders. And I said, okay. I said, do you guys have anybody in City Baptist? Is there any City Baptist students? He said, no. He said, we used to. He said, but she's not in school anymore. And I said, well, let's go there first. And we went to the 1400 block of Catalpa Street and walked up to the second floor, and a little girl came to the door. She was probably 10 or 11 years old, and her name was Jackie. And when she came to the door, she recognized me, and she said, I know you. She said, you're Brother John. She said, I recognize you from junior church, because I used to help Brother Ray Young in junior church. And I said, that's right. And I said, Jackie, I said, what do you think about coming to church tomorrow? She hadn't been coming for a while. And I said, Jackie, what do you think about coming to church tomorrow? And then she thought about it for a little bit, and then she said, will you be there? I said, yeah, you know what, I'll be there. I remember walking down the steps, and I told Chris, I said, you know what, this might be the worst bus area in the entire city. I have no idea what I'm getting into. But I said to Chris, I said, this is going to be my bus route. Because of that little girl. And I said, that little girl's going back. She's going back. I don't know how, but she's going to go back to City Baptist School. And she did. And her brother did. And her two little sisters did. I remember one time I pulled up in front of her house a couple years later. She got on the bus and she said, I have a visitor that wants to come to church. And I said, great. And so we drove a few blocks over. I think we came over to your route. I'm not sure. But we drove a few blocks over, and she got off the bus and ran up the steps and brought a little girl with her, and about the same age. They got on the bus together, and they rode to church. By then, I was preaching the B Junior Church service every Sunday. We met in the main auditorium after Brother Hiles would preach. He'd dismiss all the adults, and then I would come in with all the children, and we'd have bus church there in the auditorium. And I never forget, I preached that Sunday morning, and at the invitation, I watched Jackie take her friend Lydia by the hand and walk her down the aisle to make sure Lydia got saved. A few years later, Jackie moved away. She moved to Texas, of all places. Moved down to the border of Mexico, down, I think, either Mission or I can't remember now, but far down into Texas. But her friend Lydia kept coming to church. And Lydia went to City Baptist School. And then Lydia graduated from our school and went to Howells Anderson College. And after college, she was hired to teach at City Baptist School. Went back to City Baptist to be a teacher. And I think about that story, and now she's married and has children, has a family of her own. And that's just one of so many stories I could tell you tonight, because the reward is great. The reward is great. But it's not a one and done. It's not being in the bus ministry for a couple of years and then you go on to something else. You got to stay with it. You got to stay with it, but it has great rewards. Let me say this also in closing. The bus ministry will do as much for the workers as it does for the people they bring. For many years, I thought as a bus worker, I'm going to go to Chicago and I'm going to make a difference in their life. I'm going to change them. Didn't quite work out that way. Because what I found out is they wound up changing me. Yeah. They changed me. Because the bus ministry will do as much for the workers as it does for the kids. And then the last thing I'll say tonight, and we'll close, but the bus ministry needs to be supported and promoted in our churches. We need to keep the bus ministry alive because it is still an effective tool to reach people for Christ. And I believe that with all my heart. We believe that with all my heart. When you get a group of people together and you say to them, go to a neighborhood and knock on doors and try to bring people to church and have a little promotion, maybe give them a goldfish if they come, or maybe give them a hot dog if they come, or have a pizza party if they come. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with a little incentive. You go to Burger King, get 2 Whoppers for $3 or $6 or whatever it is. That's a promotion. And we're not bribing. There's a difference between bribery and blackmail and telling a bus kid, hey, if you come to church tomorrow, we're going to have pizza. It's okay. It's okay to do that. Every year when we graduate our seniors from City Baptist School, we always give their testimony. We share the testimony with the church family. And almost every one of them start like this. It was a goldfish Sunday and somebody knocked on my door and brought me to church. Or it's a horseback riding Sunday and somebody knocked on my door and brought me to church. And almost every testimony is because of a fall or spring program where some workers got excited and they went out and they just brought a lot of visitors and some extra people came. And not all of them stuck, but some of them did. And the ones that stuck are living for the Lord and they're living for God. But we need to promote it and we need to pray for it. We need to pray for bus ministries and pray for churches that are trying, that bus them in as a wonderful ministry. And we need to support it, pray for it, because it's doing a work that is just it's just amazing. It's amazing what they're doing. Because a lot of is at stake. Heaven and hell are at stake. And we need to do all we can. We need to do our part. Bus ministry is important. It's important, and it's worth giving our time, our energy, and our life. Father, I pray that you would help us to make a commitment to not just love the bus ministry, not just believe in the bus ministry, but be committed to it. Committed to do what we can. Committed to pray. Committed to maybe visit for an hour or two on a Saturday. Maybe committed to just to give and maybe start a fund where a bus could be purchased. Committed to pray for workers. Maybe decide, we don't have a bus, but maybe I could go out and just start bringing people in my car. Maybe that could grow to a van. Maybe, Lord willing, God would give us a bus. We could do more to reach people for Christ. Father, I pray that you'd help us to be committed to believe the importance of the bus ministry because it's so needed in our country. Our heads are bowed, our eyes are closed, and